Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Freeform Saturday night's main event. Because we're here live on a Saturday, and we got Alan. What's going on, sir? How are you?
Well, David, it's great to be here. The year is new, the worries are few, and with Freeform Saturday night's main event, well, it's great information and fun times two.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So we got a lot to talk about. I know. Oh boy.
Well,
When it comes to the Royal Rumble, oh boy.
that's not what I'm going to be talking about, but you're welcome to talk about it.
Oh boy.
Not so royal this year?
Well, not so loyal. I mean,
Royal.
okay, Liv Morgan wins the Royal Rumble, and Sami Zayn loses the World Heavyweight title from Drew McIntyre, so no riot. And
Wait a minute, he lost his title match, you mean, Sami Zayn? Is that what you mean?
yes, yes.
Okay. Well, I know there's a bucket here I can cry into. I got to find it. That's Henry Godwin's slop bucket, excuse me.
Well, it's not a slop bucket, more of a fuck it bucket.
That's my attitude toward it these days. So there you go.
All right, so let's get into the main point of why we're going live and why you wanted to talk about this stuff.
Yes, not the Royal Rumble stuff, but the stuff that I wanted to talk about, I presume you mean?
Yes.
Well, all right. So you want me to just get started?
Yes.
Okay. So the first thing I was going to address tonight was the an important anniversary in the pro wrestling world, and that's basically the shift of Jim Crockett Promotions to ownership by Turner Home Entertainment of the NWA. In early 1989, it was already about 2 months going, and well, to say things weren't going well is an understatement, but something major is an anniversary we're going to look at tonight when something actually really good, perhaps the only good thing about the first 6 months of Ted Turner taking over Jim Crockett Promotions happened, and that is the January 18th, 1989, 37-year anniversary of the surprise return of the inimitable Rikki the Dragon Steamboat to the NWA, and I'm going to explain a bit what the background is for this and why it was monumental. Some of you may remember, of course, that 1989 was an incredible year for those matches between Ric Flair and Rikki the Dragon Steamboat, of course, which later muted into Ric Flair versus Terry Funk in the summer of that year. But the first 6 months of 1989, things were not exactly on fire, I should say, since November 1st, 1988, when Ted Turner, his company, officially bought Jim Crockett Promotions. The deed was signed over to him, and Jim Crockett continued to book for a while because Dusty Rhodes was to be fired in December of 88 or early January 89 for the how shall I put it, the unforgivable use of blood on TBS, Superstation TBS, in the angle with the Road Warriors, where they busted Dusty Rhodes' eye open with the spike that they had. And I believe it's a spike they took off their uniform. The shoulder pads they were wearing. And this is before the cheesy orange and red or orange outfits they wore in TitanSports. This is when they had the all black outfit and they came out to Iron Man. I guess they probably didn't have to worry about trademark infringement. But Dusty Rhodes was, of course, the booker of Jim Crockett Promotions and kept things, well, depends who you ask. Some people felt he kept things good. Of course, everything torpedoed financially, but Dusty was not to last in the new regime either. And eventually, George Scott was brought in to book this new NWA World Championship Wrestling promotion. And George Scott, who had been a very talented booker in the 70s, according to most, and had had a run in the World Wrestling Federation in the mid-80s with Vince McMahon. And what finally brought that relationship basically to an end is that George Scott was an old school, old-fashioned pro wrestling guy. And he wasn't really a sports entertainment guy. So once the first WrestleMania happened, he was really butting heads pretty hard with Vince McMahon about how the presentation should be. Vince wanted to go completely Hollywood, of course, and George Scott wanted to stick to old-fashioned wrestling. Maybe it's no surprise that George Scott and Hulk Hogan did not get along at all, and eventually it just spelled the end of George Scott's run there. But somebody George Scott really championed and liked and even brought into the WWF was Rick Steamboat, who had a great relationship with George, and George had pushed him hard before in the Mid-Atlantic territory in the 70s, and which was basically the Jim Crockett territory. And when he took over the NWA, some felt he was really over the hill in 1989 and didn't really have a deep understanding of what this new wrestling direction was all about. But one thing he did have going for him, because business was really sinking fast, was a good connection with Rikki the Dragon Steamboat. And with Dusty Rhodes' departure, and Dusty and Steamboat never really coexisted well in the same territory, that's actually what got Rikki Steamboat to leave the NWA the first time in 1984, 85, and then go over to the WWF where George Scott was booking for a while. Now, here we go again, George Scott's booking. So, basically they created this bridge between Steamboat coming back. Steamboat had left the WWF, of course, after WrestleMania 4 in March of 88. His relationship with the WWF had essentially gone down. They didn't want to push him anymore. Of course, he lost the Intercontinental title 8 weeks after winning it at WrestleMania 3. Ric Flair takes credit for bringing his arch enemy, Rick Steamboat, into the NWA at that time. I mean, I can't prove or disprove that's true. We'll say that it's true, but Steamboat was known to have a great relationship with George Scott. Now, George, at a time when the television shows were really getting very generic and there was a lot of medium level talent. There was a lot of, much as was happening over on the other channel in the WWF, the NWA was losing a lot of its momentum and talent too. Dusty Rhodes' departure, of course, was really glaring. But there were other departures. People would come in and go pretty fast. Bam Bam Bigelow came in pretty fast to the NWA after his WWF departure, but then he disappeared again after losing to Barry Windham at Starrcade 88. Lex Luger was demoted and was told he wasn't going to get a shot at Flair anymore after his 2 big pay-per-view title shots that year. So here we are, January 89. One of the big angles on television is the late hot stuff Eddie Gilbert having a war with what's left of the Four Horsemen. Another huge departure a few months before Dusty's was, of course, Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson's defection over to the WWF. So half the Four Horsemen were gone, and soon J.J. Dillon would be gone too, to take an office position with Vince McMahon and TitanSports Incorporated. But in January 89, they were working an angle where Eddie Gilbert, who couldn't possibly ward off the 2 horsemen that were left, Flair and Windham, and Flair and Windham kept beating him up, and Eddie Gilbert had that sort of, he was a small guy, he had that underdog momentum going, where he was going to try to fight off the big bad horseman, and he did admirably. And this was one of the times that he was a baby face. Obviously, he's worked quite a lot as a heel as well. In this case, like in the UWF, before they sold to Crockett Promotions with Bill Watts's territory, Eddie Gilbert ran the faction Hot Stuff Incorporated. But in this case, Eddie was the underdog, and he promised the Horsemen if they give him one more shot in a tag team match, he would bring in a partner to fight Flair and Windham. So Flair and Windham laughed at him and said, "Oh yeah, all right, go ahead. We'll agree to it only if you agree to the stipulations that it can't be Lex Luger because he's off the slate already. He didn't succeed at Starrcade 88. So as long as it's not Luger, we'll take on anybody you want. And they were mocking him, and Barry Windham even said, "Oh, you're going to get that preliminary guy, Trent Knight, to be your partner." And so Eddie was sort of laughing, and they didn't know why he was laughing. He says, "I brought in Mr. X to be my partner." And so they're still laughing, what happened is the next week after that is when the match took place. And it turns out that Mr. X, Eddie said, "Oh, you don't know what you're getting yourself into, Flair and Windham." And they were, of course, belittling Eddie. And it turned out to be none other than Rikki the Dragon Steamboat. And the look of shock on everyone's face, the audience was, the heels, of course, the audience was going crazy. They couldn't believe it. And Flair was like, "What are you doing here? What are you doing here?" And Flair and Steamboat had a major feud and series of matches against each other 5 years earlier in '84, and they even brought it to the Northeast, like the Meadowlands Arena in New Jersey. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Rick Steamboat, who had been missing for 9 months from the wrestling industry, basically, all of a sudden returns to World Championship Wrestling, and he winds up pinning Ric Flair after a flying body press. And it's a hugely shocking upset. Flair is going crazy, and J.J. Dillon's going just absolutely ballistic, off the charts, saying it doesn't count, that wasn't a real match, and et cetera, et cetera. We didn't have time to prepare for this. And of course, that set in wheels the Steamboat Flair, especially with a non-title win on television, non-title pin, even in a tag team match. This set the stage for Flair Steamboat at the Chi-Town Rumble, which took place, of course, in Chicago on February 20th of that year. But this is a commemoration of the tag team match that started it all, when Eddie Gilbert's mystery partner turned out to be Rikki the Dragon Steamboat. And that's 37 years ago, back on January the 18th. Back to you, David. Do we have Mr. B? Well, I'm not sure the great David where he is there, but he's somewhere. Okay. I guess I'll just go on to another topic then. Another topic.
No, I'm here.
Oh,
I'm
you're
here.
there. Okay, good.
I'm
Welcome
sorry.
You went over to Parts Unknown for a bit there.
Parts unknown. So do you want to talk about the CWA Memphis house show from January 22nd, January 18th, 1989? Well, you already talked about that. CWA Memphis show from January 18th, 1988. Max Payne defeating Don Bruise. Gary Young defeating Ron Bruise. Candi Devine defeating Bambi. Billy Travis and Ricky Nelson defeating Mike Davis and Tommy Lane in a loser leaves town match. And Bill Dundee defeating Terry Taylor by countout. And you also have Double J, Jeff Jarrett, and Manny Fernandez defeating Jimmy Jack Funk and Taijo Khan by disqualification. And you also have Marty Jannetty and Shawn Michaels. The Midnight Rockers defeating Kane Wayne and Scott Hall in a no disqualification to retain the AWA tag team titles. And Curt Hennig kept his AWA world title when he defeated Jerry Lawler. Care to talk about that?
Yes, I do, actually. I would like to focus on a couple of those matches. And yes, you heard right. There was indeed none other than future Razor Ramon, Scott Hall, working his way around the independent and regional territories. Obviously, he was big in Florida, had his run in the AWA with Curt Hennig. There he was on that show as well. Marty and Jannetty and Shawn Michaels had basically were on loan from the AWA, you might say. This was in between their first and second WWF runs. They had a good heel run in Memphis there, which was probably the only time they ever worked as heels together. That was pretty much something. But the match I most wanted to focus on was and yes, that is the future Red Rooster, Terry Taylor, who stopped into Memphis for a run after things had gone south in Jim Crockett Promotions and the UWF, and they had that infamous UWF television title unification match, I believe, at Starrcade 87. And Terry Taylor's bright future in the NWA kind of sunk at that point, and the idea of maybe having an interpromotional war between the UWF and the NWA didn't really come to pass. They had a couple of, one wrestler from one promotion versus another, but it was a real sort of letdown, very anticlimactic. And Terry Taylor, who idolizes, of course, Ric Flair, was not going to be anywhere close to the next Ric Flair. And soon enough, and this was a pretty good run he had in Memphis. He would go on to a very good run in Texas with world-class championship wrestling and had that great feud with Chris Adams, et cetera, before being hired, of course, along with Kurt Hennig in the summer of '88 in the WWF. But I'd like to talk a little bit about Billy Joe Travis. So what was the match you said that Billy Travis was in? I forgot already.
Well, I forgot too.
Oh, you could check what Billy Travis was. I think, he was teaming with Ricky Nelson, who he was teaming at the time, and they went against, who did they go against again? Well, it doesn't even matter, I guess, because I wanted to tell a story about Billy Travis, not particularly this match. I mean, Billy Travis is kind of one of the unsung heroes of professional wrestling who, like Buddy Landell, like guys like that, could have really burst out of the regionals if things were different and could have had a major run in the major leagues. Billy Travis was also Jeff Jarrett's best buddy, maybe not a very well-known fact. In real life at the time, Billy Joe Travis, I think his real name was Gary Wise, if I'm not mistaken. He was good buddies with Jarrett, but they often were on opposite sides of the ring. Jarrett as a babyface and Travis as a heel. And Travis was such a great heel. He just would get heat everything he did, everywhere he would go in the promotion. He had great facial expressions and body language, and just, he sold extremely well. He used to, it was very easy for him as well. He worked both as a face and a heel. Billy Joe Travis, if he was a bigger guy, he probably would have for sure got a run in the WWF or at least Jim Crockett Promotions, NWA. He basically had a really cool look. He had the platinum blonde hair that was all sort of curled up, curly hair, and sort of just had a great personality and was good in the ring. There was a very infamous incident that took place many years later on Memphis television, which is one of probably the only times in wrestling history where a shoot sort of met a work right in the middle of the TV show. Now, these TV shows were done live on Saturday mornings from WMC5 Studios, Memphis Wrestling, and there was an unfortunate event that took place when Billy Joe Travis was getting ready to do his usual, whoever he was, babyface he was feuding with at the time. Apparently, Billy Travis owed a lot of back pay and child support payments, and the police had trouble finding him at this time in his career. This is during the mid-'90s. And in having trouble finding him, the police said to the mother of his child, we're having trouble finding Billy. So the woman said, well, I don't know where he is all the time, but I can tell you where he is every Saturday morning. He's at WMCTV5 Studios filming Memphis Wrestling live. So the police found that really interesting, and they decided one Saturday morning to pay Billy Travis a visit at the studios where they were actually in the middle of filming the television show. So first the police, I think, ran into, I guess it was Jerry Lawler, probably, maybe Bill Dundee. And they said to the police, what are you doing here? And they said, oh, we're here for Billy Travis. And they're like, Billy Travis is working now for the next hour and a half. Can you talk to him after? And they said, no, we have a bench warrant for his arrest due to defaulting on child support payments. So we need to arrest this guy. And now we've had trouble finding him. We know he's here. Yes, he's here. He's about to go on television and do his job. So they didn't know what to do. So they said, okay, well, I guess they got to do it. They had to step aside and let the police do their thing. But they tried to, it came off like it was kind of like an angle. Everybody at home thought it was part of the show, basically, because it wouldn't be so unusual to see Billy Travis get arrested. He was a dastardly heel who had pulled all kinds of shenanigans on different people, including Lawler in the past. There was an infamous angle one time where Jerry Lawler had needed to get revenge on Travis and started putting a baseball bat to what was alleged to be Travis's car in the parking lot with the cameras rolling, and he kept breaking different windows until Travis would agree to sign a contract. So anyway, so the police are going to march onto live TV and arrest Travis. Now, years later, we saw this many times in the WWF and WWE with Steve Austin and, Vince McMahon sending the cops after Austin or whoever, and other wrestlers being involved in these type of things too. The police later went on to be used in both WWF and security in WCW to do various angles, but this was actually real. So Travis's manager at the time, Luther Biggs, decided to play along with the charade and sort of make it seem like it was exactly supposed to happen. And the police handcuffed Travis, and then you had Luther Biggs jumping around, telling him that he's going to get him F. Lee Bailey, he's going to get Johnny Cochran to come down to the courthouse and bail him out. Because this is not long after the O.J. Simpson, maybe even during the O.J. Simpson trial, this was happening. So Biggs was really entertaining in this, and the fans, because Travis was such a good actor anyway, people thought, okay, this is part of the show, but that was an actual legitimate arrest, and they took Billy Travis to jail, where he legitimately stayed for a little while, and they tried to see what they could do about those child support payments. So the card that you're talking about took place some years before that. Travis, he was in the thick of things. He had a guitar gimmick, and you wonder where Jeff Jarrett got the guitar gimmick. It's probably less from the Honky Tonk Man and more from his feuds with Billy Travis, because Billy used to carry around a guitar and try to break it over Jeff's head even. So that guitar, breaking the guitar gimmick, was really strong in Memphis as well. And I think Jarrett picked up some tips possibly from that when he became Double J, as you said, in the WWF later on. Travis, though, had an unfortunate life story. He had a lot of personal demons that were no secret. And very sadly, we don't know exactly what happened, but when he was the mere age of 41, which was not that many years after the angle we're talking about where he was arrested, he passed away, I believe, from a heart attack and left like way too young. Not uncommon, unfortunately, for this era of wrestling. And Travis didn't become the huge star nationally, but regionally he was very much a star. So for a while he was teaming with the enhancement talent, Ricky Nelson, and this card was no exception for that. But you could see the great talent in Memphis in January 1988 there, besides the obvious hometown people like Lawler, Dundee, etc. You had the AWA guys coming in, Kurt Hennig, the Midnight Rockers. T-Joe Khan was a worthy mention as well. T-Joe Khan, he had been in the AWA, often teaming with Soldat Ustinov, and had been a very dastardly heel who they claimed was from Mongolia, if I'm not mistaken, just like Killer Khan or what have you. The difference is T-Joe Khan was not Asian. T-Joe Khan was a Caucasian man who was a bodybuilder from Minnesota, the home base of the AWA, who actually sort of made his face look up the way Yoshi Kwan, who was Chris Champion, did in WCW and later on, a couple years later. And T-Joe Khan was very convincing, actually, as T-Joe Khan. He was dangerous seeming, and in Memphis he had joined the infamous stable of Gouline. For those of you who don't know, Mark Gouline was a manager in Memphis in late 1987 who started a satanic cult type of gimmick where he would gather wrestlers and help them fight baby faces in the name of evil, kind of the way that Kevin Sullivan had done in Florida. And Gouline did this really interesting angle, which Jim Cornette would later use on Batista. in Ohio Valley Wrestling, I believe it was, where basically Mark Guline starts this chant. I don't know, maybe he was supposed to be from Singapore. I don't recall now. This weird chant, and then all of a sudden he's standing by like a beach or a lake or a river or something, and he does these chants, and his newest member of Guline's army there, Tijo Khan, rises from underneath the water and is completely possessed by the Jim Jones satanic-like Mark Guline character. So the Tijo Khan that we see here in January '88 was not only a heel, but a heel that was possessed by evil, which was the sword. The sword was wielded by Mark Guline, who used to evoke the name of Alistair Sims. I was going to say Alistair Black. It was definitely not Alistair Black, yeah, but Alistair Sims, the famous purveyor of, I don't know, black magic or evil or whatever. So Tijo Khan, I was always entertained by Tijo Khan. I don't know if I realized he wasn't actually from Singapore, Malaysia, or Mongolia, wherever they said he was from, but he was a very interesting guy, and then he had a good look and had a little bit of national success. He wrestled for the NWA and Jim Crockett Promotions for a short time as well, but there was so much talent coming in at that time. He never really made like a huge impression because, well, there was just way too much talent. At this time, even gentleman Chris Adams made a brief foray into the NWA. And who did we talk about the other week that was there feuding with Denny Brown for the junior title was, my goodness, who are we talking about? Who was it? Somebody who passed away the other week?
You're asking the wrong person.
Well, I'm asking myself too. I'm trying to remember. I think we were talking about because we're talking about the death of, let me think who it was again. It was about a month ago, the death of Denny Brown, junior heavyweight. Oh, of course, Steve Mr. Electricity Regal. That was it, yeah. Steve Mr. Electricity Regal a few months ago when he passed away. We were talking about how he was brought into the NWA this time too, but there was just so much talent. It was hard to, it's kind of like when WCW was really running with Nitro and they had so much talent on the roster, the way that AEW keeps too many people under contract. So there were some people who, even if they made a bit of an impression, they didn't really get to pierce through the glass ceiling. And I feel that Tijo Khan was kind of one of those people because he was good for who he was, and he did well in the AWA for a while. But anyway, in this case, he was in Memphis under the infamous House of Guline, which was basically a satanic cult run by Mark Guline himself, who I believe is no longer with us, much like Tijo Khan is no longer with us as well. But that's the way the cookie crumbles. Billy Travis no longer with us either, but Lawler and Dundee are still here. So.
Well, in the world, when it comes to Satan, we don't actually say "Hail Satan." We say "Hail the great leader" or "the evil leader."
Do you know that from
we don't actually refer to. We don't exactly refer to them as the evil leader. It's a thing you have to do.
Well, you're saying that Mark Guline was not the evil leader of the House of Guline?
Oh, well, he can be whatever he wants, but you don't say "Hail Satan." You don't mention the devil.
Right. That's right. Yeah, no, I'm not saying he did. But he read from like a book of sorcery, evil sorcery, or what have you, whatever he was doing. But it worked for Kevin Sullivan's Army of Darkness. Kevin never talked about the devil either. They never said they were worshiping the devil. They never claimed to be satanic. It was the interim.
Kevin Sullivan's an Irish Catholic. And he even said, "I never said the devil. I'm an Irish Catholic." It's like Mujahideen, the great evil, the great Satan.
Well, be that as it may be, I do recall also the late Captain Lou Albano saying he didn't want to be in any wrestling league where Kevin Sullivan was working, because he believed legitimately that Kevin was into that stuff. So even though Kevin proclaimed to be an Irish Catholic who was only doing a gimmick, I don't know, because Albano was pretty convinced he was into some of that dark stuff. So he didn't want to be around him. I don't know. But then again, Lou Albano was, had his own issues. So I don't know if you could count on his brain being clear at that point in his life either. So I don't know. But
well, no, but Kevin Sullivan is by far the only guy that, if I were to consult somebody when it comes to heat or when it comes to storyline building, he is no longer with us, sadly. But that was somebody I would constantly consult with if I was a member of the WWE creative team, which I'm not.
Well, they could probably use you, considering the current state of the creative team. It would be a long...
Currently use me. I don't have any current status when it comes to writing. Yes, I have experience when it comes to experiencing said product. But do I have writing experience? Absolutely not. But I have experience when it comes to dealing with real life situations that have nothing to do with wrestling.
Well, that may be true and everything, but let's face it. I mean, even with all the great writing experience the people on those teams have, for them to produce what they're producing, I mean, there's no obvious sign to me that they're more talented than you could be necessarily. And I don't know. I don't see how you're any worse than any of them, regardless of their resume and what they've done. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. I mean, look at the current product and how much less people are watching it, regardless of how much money they claim to make. And of course, when you're doing shows in Saudi Arabia, you're going to make lots and lots and lots of money. You can't doubt that. And those are parts of the world where wrestling is starved, but the appetite for wrestling is very strong. But stateside, I can't believe they're doing pretty well. If you look at attendance, you look at whatever ratings are worth these days, I don't know. And, all I keep hearing is negative. I mean, I'm not watching it, and I have no desire to watch it. And they finally chased me off for good, pretty much, probably. And I was hanging there by a thread anyway for a long time. But I don't know. I just can't wrap my head around it. But I don't see how you could be any worse than who's on the writing team now. And you are a man of great ideas, so it is possible.
Well, I have ideas, but do my ideas resonate with other people? So, okay. So to talk about what went down at the Royal Rumble, Liv Morgan won the 2026 Women's Royal Rumble as predicted. All right, guys, folks, ladies and gentlemen, did you know it? I know you did.
You knew she was going to win?
Yes, I did.
Isn't that no fun when you know? Because I don't know. It used to be the fun of not knowing so much. I don't know. But then again, it's more predictable now than ever.
And then you had all kinds of waste of bullshit of matches and results. I mean, you had Liv Morgan win the Women's Royal Rumble, but then you had...
She was so non-memorable, yeah. I'm not even sure. A couple of those guys beat a couple of those guys, and whatever.
Yeah, a couple of these guys, they beat the crap out of these guys, and then...
expendable generic guy B defeated expendable.
And no Chris Jericho.
No Chris Jericho.
No Chris Jericho. a lot of people were saying, "Oh, Chris Jericho is gonna re-sign with WWE."
Oh,
No, no,
no.
no, no.
I guess WWE made the list.
Well, last I checked, Chris Jericho is still listed under an AEW contracted wrestler. No Chris Jericho.
Hmm. Well, I'll be sure to send him a sympathy card. That's fine.
I'm sure he could care less.
Actually, the viewers could use the sympathy card as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, well, the viewers.
Now tell me, I mean, honestly, that Memphis house show sounds better than this topic of the current results of the PLE or whatever it was. I'd rather watch that show in Memphis from then than watch this. But that's, I guess it's subjective. So.
Well, yeah. I mean, if it were, we'd play this song if you can hear it.
I hear the sounds of silence, actually.
You hear the sounds of silence. Oh, boy.
Best theme song I ever heard.
Or you hear this song, or if you hear Judas.
Oh, God, I'm glad I'm not hearing it.
Even better. I'll send you a link.
Oh, well, thank you. I'd almost want to hear.
Which is what should have been the Chris Jericho entrance.
Well,
Should
yeah.
had been should he
Well,
had
give him.
been in the Royal Rumble, but no Chris Jericho.
Yeah, I could use some with my baby tonight. That might be more appropriate for what we're in.
Spend my days working hard on the go. I'm not even gonna bother to sing that song. Jesus,
Because the hands of the clock are just ticking too slow. I know.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't have my baby tonight, but let me tell you, I'd rather have my fictional baby tonight than what I just watched.
Well, I guess you can't ask for a refund, can you?
No, you can't have an actual refund, an actual factual refund. Yes, I watched something that was complete and utter crap, but oh, hey, you subscribe to Netflix. Well, you saw what you saw. And if you don't like it, well,
you can waste a few hours of your life next time again watching the next thing they put on.
Yeah, exactly.
So, the next topic I was going to talk about, did you have it there?
Oh, I have it. I have it somewhere because
I think I know what it is.
Now we got off topic.
I think I know what it is, actually. But.
Okay, better you than me, so I'll let you talk about it.
All right. Well, it's interesting we're talking about the Royal Rumble because one topic I wanted to talk about was the anniversary of Marty Jannetty, who we talked about a little earlier, being fired from the WWF the day after the Royal Rumble. Not the Royal Rumble 2026, but rather a good 33 years ago, the Royal Rumble 1993 in Sacramento, California, which also marked... Yes? I hear noise.
I remember that. I remember their whole contest being getting negative feedback because Blackjack Lanza or whoever was agenting them at the time said, "Oh, their matches are so good. They have to steal the show. They should be the main event." But they weren't.
Well, not that the main event was so great that night, but yeah, I mean, this was an important Royal Rumble too. It's the first time which would begin the new tradition of having the winner of the Royal Rumble go on to face the champion at WrestleMania. But this was also noteworthy because this is one of the first times the undercard was pretty stellar. on the Royal Rumble. Usually the undercard matches were kind of disjointed, out of place, not that good, kind of just they didn't really fit. But this year they were pulling out all the stops. I guess they were getting desperate too because business had plummeted way down. The golden era had clearly crashed, and here we're in kind of the new generation. A lot of the big stars of the 80s were gone, and all of a sudden these two smaller guys who never got a chance to start their feud when Shawn put Marty's head through the barbershop window had their feud reignited after Jannetty was absent for about 11 months. And it was going to culminate at the Royal Rumble, and like David said, Blackjack Lanza was indeed the road agent who 2 nights before the Royal Rumble witnessed their live match to warm up by facing each other a bunch of times in Denver, Colorado. Match was absolutely flawless, according to those who were there, according to Lanza, and they had basically perfected a match that had to be seen to be believed. So the hopes were really high from Vince McMahon and from whoever else that this match was probably easily going to steal the show at the Royal Rumble 1993. Unfortunately, in Sacramento, it did not steal the show. It was pretty damn good, but it was nowhere near the level of what their match in Denver was, and even some other matches around that time that they'd had. Now, Marty claimed the reason that the match wasn't as good is because they changed the formula. This was the show at the Royal Rumble where Sherry Martel would actually figure into the outcome and the unfolding of the match. At the house show matches, Sherry was not present and really involved in any major way, but at the Royal Rumble match, she was. So this really apparently, according to Marty, threw off their timing, threw off the sort of, it's almost like they had a memorized series of like moves and sequences, the way that, let's say, Steamboat and Randy Savage did at WrestleMania 3. The difference is they just knew each other so well from all their 7 years of teaming, and they really had a good. They're both excellent workers, of course, and they had they could easily anticipate and improvise in a very, very polished fashion what they could do. This night was not as good as the other nights because Marty said having Sherry in the match really threw things sideways. So while it wasn't bad, it wasn't really what it had been at the house shows. Certainly not the match that Blackjack Lanza had described. And yes, Vince was very dissatisfied with what he saw. But he left it at that, and it was what it was. It already happened. The pay-per-view continued. But the next night, they were going to be setting up a WrestleMania, some of the WrestleMania feuds going toward WrestleMania 9. And the scheduled match was to have Marty and Shawn for the Intercontinental title at WrestleMania 9 in Las Vegas. However, when Marty got to the arena, which I want to say was in San Jose, California, after the night before in Sacramento, he was informed that he should go see Vince in his office. And he was ready to do his angles and matches. He went to see Vince, and Vince said, "Well, sorry to tell you this, but you're fired." And Jannetty's like, "What? Just because you didn't think our match was like absolutely fantastic to the level that you wanted it to be? If you're going to fire someone for having a bad match, you got to fire half the guys on the card because our matches are still better, even if they weren't up to par what you were expecting, than a lot of the other people on the card." So Marty was dumbfounded. He never heard of somebody getting fired for having a bad match. But actually what it was, according to Vince, is not the match itself, but the information he was fed that Marty had been inebriated in the locker room in Sacramento before the Royal Rumble match. And regardless of how the match turned out, he couldn't have intoxicated people ready to work and risk someone else's well-being and body because of intoxication. Now, Marty claimed he wasn't drunk at all. He did have a very late night the night before the Royal Rumble. He admitted that. It wasn't a wise idea, but he made a lot of not-so-wise decisions, but so did Shawn. And he said he swore, if there were a stack of Bibles there, he swore that he was not drunk, and this is unjust. Vince said, "Too bad, you're gone." And that's how Marty got fired. Not the first time. This was already the third time, I believe. from the WWF, and Tatanka was put into the place of Marty as Shawn's next big opponent, and they went on to have their match, which was not as good as Marty and Shawn would have been at WrestleMania 9, but all of a sudden Jannetty found himself without a job again. But a few months later, Kurt Hennig went to bat for for Marty to Vince McMahon and said, "Look, it's not what you were thinking. Marty wasn't drunk. It was actually Shawn that was messed up that day. We're not sure if it was alcohol or whatever." Shawn was like, I think Shawn and Marty were both kind of lying on a bench.
I'll get right back into this. Shawn apparently the night before or the day before was well intoxicated to the point where allegedly Kurt Hennig had to dig vomit out of Shawn Michaels' mouth.
That's bad. That's bad.
Well, we covered the 1993 Royal Rumble. Not just us, but we had Stefan and we had Martin talk about it. And I will go look back into the archives and reemerge said conversation. I know it was a long one, but it's around. I have it in my saved files.
No, that's fine. I wasn't going to focus on the Rumble as a show itself, just to illustrate, how many times Marty has been fired, and this was one of the occasions. He did get his job back when it was shown that basically Shawn was the one, not Marty, who was under the influence of whatever, and of course he was rewarded. Marty, on his night back, he defeated Shawn at the Manhattan Center on May the 6th of that year. This is a little over a month after WrestleMania 9. He came back, defeated Shawn for the belt, and was about to have a pretty good run. Unfortunately, didn't exactly go that way, and he did lose the title a month later back to Shawn when Kevin Nash made his debut as Diesel, Shawn Michaels' bodyguard. And I don't even think he was called Diesel at first. He was just Shawn's bodyguard. And of course,
that's all we had to say. Viso or Diesel.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. So, but that time he wasn't really wrestling much. He was bodyguarding for a little while, and that's the story of Marty's firing. Shall we go on to the next topic?
I was awaiting for you to give us the go-ahead. Oh, boy. So what's the next topic you want to discuss? Unless you want me to introduce it.
No, I know what it is. I wanted to talk about the legacy of the late Pez Whatley, another forgotten figure like Billy Travis in the annals of wrestling history. Pez Whatley, why we're talking about it now, it's because it's the 21st anniversary in January of his passing. He died in 2005, but he contributed a lot to the wrestling industry, maybe not as a headliner everywhere, but he had almost a 30-year career that traces back to 1973 when he first got into the wrestling business, working for the Sheik's Big Time Wrestling in Detroit. And Pez Whatley was a very interesting guy. I mean, there were a lot of firsts, a lot of barriers that Whatley broke. He went to the University of Chattanooga, Tennessee, and was actually their very, very first African-American wrestler to be an amateur wrestler there. So he broke the mold in the 60s doing that. And basically in wrestling, before wrestling, he was also a power lifter. So he was a very, like a sort of thick, barrel-chested, muscular guy, kind of. Not muscular in like terms of definition, but he was very thick. And he was a strong, strong guy. And he had a lot of personality and charisma. And he showed it in various territories that he wrestled in. He was involved in also some pretty famous stuff that was in terms of angles and characters. One of the first that comes to mind is when he wrestled for the Poffo family in their outlaw promotion of ICW in Kentucky. and surrounding areas. This is when ICW was running opposition to Lawler and Jerry Jarrett's Memphis territory and putting on shows in Lexington, Kentucky, and around certain areas, including Tennessee. And basically, ICW's mission was to crowd in on the slice of the market that Memphis wrestling had. And one of the interesting, very memorable characters that happened at this time was actually a tag team known as the Convertible Blondes. And I guess the idea was that the blonde hair is wavy in the wind and you're driving down the street in your Corvette or your Mustang. And this is the Convertible Blondes. Now, one of the Convertible Blondes was Rip Rogers, who had a nice long mane of blonde hair at the time, as he would later on in Stampede Wrestling in Calgary. Gary Royal, who sometimes served as their manager. But the other Convertible Blonde was Pez Whatley, an African-American man who decided to go a bit of the Sweet Daddy Siki Butch Reed route. And I don't think he dyed his hair blonde, but he was wearing a blonde wig a lot. And it was supposed to be, I mean, it was like funny. Maybe it was distasteful. I don't know. So he became one of the Convertible Blondes. And Whatley had the personality to pull it off like Rip Rogers. And, you know, they would have no problem infuriating the fans. And Whatley would prove very good at that through his career. Also, while he was in the Poffo's ICW, yes, that's the same Poffo family that produced Randy Macho Man Savage, the genius or leaping Lanny Poffo, the dad, Angelo Poffo, etc. And another memorable angle he was involved in, Pez Whatley, while in ICW, was with none other than the one-man gang, but not the one-man gang that you remember, George Gray, a.k.a. Akeem, the African Dream. We're talking about the first one-man gang, none other than Montreal native Hands of Stone, Ronnie Garvin, who David and I had the pleasure to hobnob with over a year ago when he was here. And you, of course, remember meeting the Garvins, David? I don't hear you. Are you muted, David? I don't hear what you're saying.
I was muted, but the biggest memory or the recollection for the both of us was meeting Ronnie Garvin. And I remember from a personal standpoint getting my world heavyweight title autographed. And not only that, but the time that the both of us spent with Ron and Jimmy, as well as Ray and Jacques Rougeau.
Yeah, it was definitely an epic day for sure. An epic afternoon, meeting the Garvins, hanging out with the Rougeaus. It was really great. And Ronnie Garvin was involved in this infamous angle with Pez Whatley, where the loser would basically have to put on a mop wig, like literally the head of a mop, and wear it on top of their head. And the stipulation stated that the only way you could take the mop off your head is when you win your next match. So the hilarity of the angle was that Pez Whatley lost to Ronnie Garvin, maybe not a huge surprise, and Pez Whatley had to put this mop on his head, and every time he appeared in an arena on television, he had to have a mop on his head, and he was desperately trying to get a win over whomever, so he was allowed to take it off. Now, Garvin would then proceed to interfere in a lot of Pez's matches so that Whatley would lose by countout, disqualification, whatever, and he would continue to have to wear the mop on his head. Now, it sounds dumb by today's standards, maybe, but it was a pretty hot angle that was very memorable in the Poffo's ICW at the time. And Pez Whatley eventually moved out of the ICW. He wrestled in Georgia and Tennessee and Florida. He went to the NWA, Jim Crockett Promotions, and had a very memorable angle when him and Jimmy Boogie Woogie Man Valiant formed a very energetic tag team. And they had a very famous angle when they were going against Paul Jones's army at the time of Baron von Raschke, the Barbarian, Sione Velahi, and the third one was, I don't remember right now. Maybe it was Manny Fernandez. I'm not sure. Anyway, speaking of Manny Fernandez, Jimmy and Pez were a hot tag team. They both liked to rock and roll and boogie woogie and dance and do all this stuff. And there was one time where Pez was starting to talk about he wanted to become the NWA's first African-American heavyweight champion, a feat that would actually, of course, be accomplished by Ron Simmons a bunch of years later. But apparently it was okay when he said that, but Jimmy Valiant said the magic words, and he repeated that at one point during an interview together, and Pez Whatley did not take kindly to it. He got a look in his eye the way that John Cena did before he turned heel about a year and a half ago or so, when he was looking at The Rock, and then Rock made the throat-cutting motion. Like, that kind of look came over Pez Whatley, like, how dare you say that, Valiant? And then Valiant's like, am I right, Pez? Am I right? And then Valiant clocked him, beat the living stuffing out of him, and, turned heel. And that was a very infamous heel turn by Pez, who would remain a heel in the NWA. He stayed with Paul Jones' army for a while. And yes, Paul Jones had the very politically incorrect gimmick of being like an Adolf Hitler worshiper or what have you. And basically had that sort of, head of a stable of wrestlers who believed in fascist philosophy, or his fascist philosophy. And Whatley was doing that, but after a while, he had actually changed his character and became known as Shaska Whatley. So he got rid of the name Pez. Pez was actually part of his real name. His real name was Pezavine or something Whatley. I think it was Pezavine. Anyway, so Pez Whatley became Shaska Whatley. Started wearing a top hat and fancy, like suit, like jackets that. Like dance troops, like the Rockettes or whoever would wear. And he turned himself into Shaska Whatley, and eventually had a great tag team going with Tiger Conway Jr., another forgotten name in the annals of wrestling, where Whatley and Conway would be known as the Jive Tones. And they said they were going to take over tag team wrestling in the NWA. Unfortunately, the Road Warriors, the Rock and Roll Express, and whomever else thought differently, and the Jive Tones would basically lose many of their matches, especially their high-profile ones, but they did make it to the third annual Crockett Cup, which was the last one of that era, in April of '88. But things were not really going that hot. They were losing so often. So Shaska and Conway took off to Florida Championship Wrestling, where they would spend much of the rest of 1988. And then Pez would leave and join the Fullers Continental Wrestling in Alabama, which was one of my favorite promotions of the late 80s. They had the Fullers had sold the promotion to David Woods, and I thought the promotion was really hot. They were getting a lot of magazine coverage back then, and their TV show was really good. You had Dr. Tom Pritchard, who was heavily featured there, the future T.L. Hopper, Dirty White Boy, Tony Anthony. You had, there were just so many. Randy Colley, after he had left the Demolition Smash and Moondog Rex gimmick, and the WWF went there, and he started a gimmick called Detroit Demolition, where he was like an unofficial third member of Demolition. You had D.I. Bob Carter. You had a bunch of great talent. And you also had Pez Whatley come in and again revamp his character, this time turn babyface again and get known as Willie B. Hurt, which is a great play on word. That's right. Pez Whatley became Willie B. Hurt. And in one of my favorite angles from this period ever, Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert, who I was talking about him going on to be a babyface a year later. Well, he was a heel at this time, and he was attacking, believe it or not, the family of Willie B. Hurt, including his 14-year-old son, in a very infamous angle in the summer of '88. And you'll never guess, David, who was participating as a heel with Eddie Gilbert in basically stirring the pot and getting Willie B. Hurt really fired up. You want to take a guess?
No. Why don't you just tell us?
Okay, well, it's somebody you're going to know quite well, especially given what you were checking out today. None other than Eddie's manager, Paul Heyman. Paul E. Dangerous.
No, allow me, sir. I'm going to corrupt you.
Exactly.
I'm going to corrupt you. Well, Paul Heyman gave me something that I had to research.
Okay.
I had to research this because I didn't know what in the hell Paul Heyman was talking about. I
Wow,
didn't know what FAFO meant,
I still
but
don't know.
I don't know either, but now I figured it out. So I'm gonna clean this up for the purpose of our broadcast, but it's like if you expletive with an F word around, find out.
Ah,
FAFO apparently.
I never heard the acronym. I know the expression, but I never heard it expressed that way. Oh, okay.
Well, now you know, and knowing's half the battle. FAFO.
Well, thank you, GI David. You're correct. Not DI, not DI Bob Carter, but GI David is in the house. Yeah, so well, that's it. And oh yeah, and of course, DI Bob Carter's faithful Private Pile. I just remembered was in Continental Wrestling. Yeah, Paul was great in this angle though. Is when he was Paulie Dangerously, he hit the son of Willie B. Hurt over the head with, or was it Willie's father? I don't know. He did, many of these family members of Willie hit him over the head with the big cell phone that he used to carry when cell phones were giant, and just great stuff. I mean, Eddie and Paul, it's too bad they couldn't coexist in ECW later on because they would have produced some brilliant stuff together. And it's so interesting, like to look at it now because you could see how brilliant Paul Heyman was. I mean, Eddie Gilbert was undoubtedly brilliant, as we know, but Paul is so young at this point in his career, and of course was going to get a really big break later that year and come into the NWA with the original Midnight Express to go against Jim Cornette's Midnight Express, and which was easily the highlight of Starrcade '88 and the end of 1988. And I was talking earlier how things were going downhill, but that's one of the things they did right, but it wasn't to last. And of course, the original Midnight Express was gone by February already, so also very short-lived. Yeah, so Pez Whatley, after doing that, did a bunch of other stuff, including appearing as an enhancement talent for the World Wrestling Federation in 1990 and 91. You could see Pez Whatley on WWF TV losing to everybody from Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig to the Big Boss Man to Shane Douglas, you name it. I mean, Whatley put over tons of talent, and the only time he would ever win was when he was wrestling house shows against the genius Lanny Poffo, against Playboy Buddy Rose, against Paul Diamond, who was not yet Kato of the Midnight Express. He was sort of an enhancement guy as himself. But Pez Whatley, every time on television, was there to lose. And he would go on to do the same for WCW in the mid-90s. You could see him on WCW Saturday Night and Worldwide and Pro and all the TV shows. And, he basically finished off his career there and became a trainer in the infamous power plant of WCW, the famous training facility run by Sergeant Buddy Lee Parker and many others over the years. But what happened after that was that Whatley was discovered to be suffering from heart failure. It was a big surprise because he had turned up in the hospital after suffering from a bout of bronchitis, but they discovered the problem was deeper than that he had actually suffered heart failure. So they gave him eventually an operation in 2003 to try to help him. I guess it worked for a while, but unfortunately in 2005, the great Pez Whatley succumbed to a heart attack, and a fatal heart attack. And to this day, I mean, I guess you could call him unsung, but the WWE Hall of Fame kind of did the right thing and inducted him into their Hall of Fame in 2021. And probably a lot of today's fans don't really know who Pez Whatley was. He's never really talked about. Maybe you'd see him in the WWE, archives, but not really in a very prominent role, I'm guessing, unless they showed his work in Jim Crockett Promotions or Georgia Championship Wrestling or wherever else. And I thought he was great in Continental as Willie B. Hurt. I mean, at a time when summer of '88 had its up and down moments, I loved following Continental Wrestling during this time, and Willie B. Hurt, aka Pez Watley, was one of the reasons. If you have a chance, go back and watch him as Shaska Watley. He was really good, both by himself and especially with Tiger Conway Jr. as the Jive Tones. Like, that shows you how the NWA was making booking mistakes. That team should have done better because they were super entertaining. Anyway, rest in peace, 21 years gone. Pezovan Pez Watley.
May his memory be a blessing. And this is why I like to have you on the show, because we talk about people who are no longer with us, that nobody remembers or no one even knew from the get-go.
Yeah, and they don't even always have to be gone. There's just so many that are gone anyway, but there's, or recently gone, like, yeah, exactly. Like when Steve Regal died, most people were thinking of William Regal. Thankfully he's alive, but how many people knew or remembered Mr. Electricity Steve Regal, or even Adrian Street?
Oh, no, nobody. I don't think anybody did.
Well,
my
interview
with Mark Blondin was on fire this week.
Yes.
Too bad you couldn't be with us.
Tonight, you mean?
Last Monday.
Oh, me? Too bad I couldn't be with you.
Too bad you couldn't be there, because I was promoting you. Because Mark was like, what do you want me to do with the stuff you provided me? Do you want me to read it aloud? I'm like, Mark, it's for you to enjoy on your own time.
Okay, well, what are you referring to? What did you provide him with?
Well, between the ropes newsletters you gave me at Slamfest.
Oh my goodness! Of course, yes, that's right. I'd forgotten you had given some to Mark Blondin. So he definitely had a fun time.
He was at a little bit of a loss for words, because he's like, "What do I do with this?" I'm like, just keep it. Just read it on your own time, Monsieur Blondin. Soyez-y, monsieur.
Oh wow, okay. So yeah, I'm sorry. I am sorry I couldn't be there in the end. You did a fantastic interview, and really had a great time watching it. It was a highlight. Just totally great stuff, and you were great. Mark was great, and well, thank you for promoting me. Mark Blondin represents a lot of childhood memories for me. The very first person I saw in a ring in a live wrestling show was Mark Blondin step into the ring at the Montreal Forum on October 25th, 1987, to begin ring announcing that show. And he's the first guy associated with the WWF I ever saw in my entire life as a 12-year-old. So Mark Blondin holds a very special place in my heart, in my wrestling heart, for sure.
No, Mark is a good man, and I want to thank a mutual friend of ours. I want to thank not Martin Villeneuve, but I want to thank
not Martin Villeneuve. He's a great guy too.
Well, Martin is a good man. I want to thank Martin Brissette. Now, Martin Brissette is somebody that I met through Martin Villeneuve, through Wrestling Collectibles Auctions, who, by the way, is going to have their first auction in a long time tomorrow. So this is why I'm going live. And I'm not going live tomorrow. Neither shall either one of us, not to compete, because we want to make sure that everybody gets the opportunity to join in and enjoy.
Absolutely, no. So those are always great auctions.
I want to thank Martin Villeneuve, Stéphane Gauthier, but also Martin Brissette. I want to thank them all because Martin Brissette brought me in touch with Marc Blondin, who has been to my apartment many occasions, and we've had some fun times, and Mark has always given me a shout out on his YouTube channel, and when it comes to exposing or disposing his collection, Mark has always taken it upon himself to mention me.
Well, it's a great thing to do because let's face it, he's Marc Blondin, and you are the inimitable, dapper David Buchanan. So.
Well, yeah, and we had a damn good interview. We had a
Yeah.
damn good interview on Monday, and it was just right out of the blue. Just after finishing a work shift, 30 minutes later, getting everything ready, and I was just on fire, and I was just like, "Soyez-y, messieurs, Max Blanc." Just being loud and just being
The way Mark was when he was ring announcing, so exciting and charismatic and et cetera, et
yeah,
cetera. Yeah.
exactly.
Well, I would.
It's too bad you couldn't be there with us because
Well, it is too bad. But then again, on the other hand, I think maybe sometimes the guests feel more comfortable when there's only a one-on-one interview. It depends on the situation, but encourage people to check out the interview. I don't know if you've been plugging it or not, but it's so great. I mean, people should see.
This gives us the opportunistic time to say, if you haven't already, what have you been waiting for? If you like the content we are prescribing, it's not like drug medication, but if you like what we're doing, please be sure to hit the like and subscribe. Doesn't cost you a thing. And hit the notification bell so you get notified every single time we go live. And it was my sheer pleasure to go live with Marc Blondin. Marc Blondin, merci, Monsieur Blondin. C'était très apprécié. And I greatly appreciate the time you gave me. And I appreciate each and every one of you that liked and got a chance to subscribe to my channel if you liked what we provided or what I gave you. Marc Blondin is a tremendous individual. He's a good human being. He's been over at my place multiple times, and I am proud to call him a good friend.
That's excellent. I'm sure he's very proud and very happy that he knows you now and sees what you're all about too. And it's a great meeting of the minds there. It's good stuff. And the mouths. So.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So before we wrap things up, let's see. We talked about Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty.
There's only one topic. Yeah, there's only one topic left, actually.
The stunning victory of the Mountie? Is that what we're getting at?
That's what we're getting at, speaking of Quebec wrestling talent.
Oh, boy. Let's go at it. The stage is yours.
Well, thank you very much, David. So we're going to rewind now to January 17th, 1992, also right before another Royal Rumble, the one previous to the one we talked about with Shawn and Marty. And this takes us to what culminates in Albany, New York, at the Knickerbocker Arena for the 1990 Royal Rumble, and the surprising events that took place at a house show 2 nights before in Springfield, Massachusetts. Now, Bret Hart had been on a very hot streak as the Intercontinental Champion, his first singles title in the WWF, which he, of course, took away from Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig at SummerSlam 91. And the real reason for that anyway was Kurt couldn't really wrestle anymore for quite a long time due to his back injury and collecting on his Lloyd's of London insurance policy. So Bret Hart was off and running with the Intercontinental title, and for whatever reason, the idea was put forth that he could lose the title the next year to Roddy Piper, who was only wrestling part-time at the time, but because I guess a lot of the bad publicity was starting to come the WWF's way, interest was dropping, the 80s hot streak was clearly ending, the Ultimate Warrior was gone for a period there. So a lot of the big names were either scaling back their schedule or leaving. You would also start to see a lot of the really big, heavy, powerhouse, muscular guys begin to disappear around this time too. No doubt in connection with the steroid scandal that was going to sweep over TitanSports Incorporated. So for whatever reason, it was thought that Piper could make a good, at least temporary, intercontinental champion. Now, according to some, including Jacques himself, the story was that Bret Hart was not comfortable just losing at the Royal Rumble to Roddy Piper. And the idea was put forth that Jacques the Mountie Rougeau, who at that point couldn't even appear in Canada as the Mountie due to the actual Royal Canadian Mounted Police finding his gimmick really objectionable because people were beginning, talk about wrestling not being real. They had really convinced a bunch of people that the Mounties in Canada were really as nasty and petty as Jacques Rougeau's Mountie character. So the Mountie was inserted as an intermediary so that Roddy Piper could get the belt without defeating Bret Hart. Now, there was a controversy. This was all very last minute in a way. There was a parallel controversy going on at the time that Bret Hart was exploring his options with WCW at the time. And this is the WCW long before Monday Nitro and, of course, everything that happened in Montreal and Bret Hart eventually leaving. This is 5 years before that. Bret did not want his first title yet, but he was talking to WCW just to at least explore his options. And this was before Eric Bischoff. This was the period where Dusty Rhodes was booking again. Like he left at the end of when he was fired and released in early '89, but he had come back in '91. So Jim Herd was on his way out of the WCW head office, and K. Allen Fry, Kip Fry, would be brought in. Anyway, Bret Hart negotiating didn't really come to that much, I guess. So some people thought the reason this happened was because Bret was negotiating with WCW, but it's also been disputed that Bret just didn't want to lose to Roddy Piper either way. So Jacques was called into a brief meeting with Pat Patterson and Vince McMahon and said, hey, we're going to make you the champion of the Intercontinental variety. And Jacques started flipping out. He was so excited. He couldn't believe that he had done so well as the Mountie, that this was going to happen to him. They said, whoa, don't get too excited. You're only going to hold the belt for 2 days. And the match isn't even going to be televised that you win. So it was a little bit less, of a champagne popping occasion of sorts. And but Jacques also tells the story that Bret was not very comfortable with losing clean to him, so they came up with the backstory that at the house show in Springfield, Massachusetts, that Bret Hart shouldn't have even wrestled that night because he had 104-degree fever, and he was such a dedicated champion. He hobbled to the ring, and even in his weakened, sick state, he was going to put up a good fight so the people of Springfield, Massachusetts could enjoy his talents in a good intercontinental title match. But of course, the Mountie emerged victorious. But Jacques said, well, what did I do? I beat a sick guy. So not exactly a crowning achievement. And then, of course, Mountie would go on at the Royal Rumble 92 to lose to Roddy Piper. And Bret Hart would go on his merry way, win the title back from Piper at WrestleMania 8. And then, of course, lose it to the British Bulldog, his brother-in-law, at SummerSlam 92. So that's the story of the Mountie, which people apparently still talk about this day, that he's a former Intercontinental Champion, that he was a great Intercontinental Champion. He's no honky-tonk man in my book.
Oh, no. I mean, there came a point where it was like, do you need me to do an imitation? You need an imitation?
I could use it.
I've done an imitation of Roddy Piper promoting his match with the Mountie at the Royal Rumble 1992.
Yeah, that was funny.
I did that, and it's available on the archives on my Facebook page. It's not on the YouTube page, but we'll make it a point to get there. But I remember, Roddy Piper with well, what we're dealing with is one of the members of the Village People.
Yes, yes, a very infamous interview moment from Roddy Piper that was both celebrated and later questioned, perhaps. And it was an odd, it's so odd to see Piper with a belt, even because he's one of those people that never came. He didn't like losing, but he never really won a belt either until this. So much later in his career, didn't need one really. He was, obviously a top star anyway. And here he was. Yeah.
No, but Piper was one of those legends that didn't need a belt to be over.
No.
He was one of those guys that could get over being a legend. He didn't need a belt. But could Piper have had a run being WWF or WWE champion? Sure.
Well, yeah.
Sure. But
yeah. Didn't need it.
yeah.
Well, look, I mean, his history is even better than that because he was part of, the War to Settle the Score and MTV and the Cyndi Lauper crossover rock and wrestling connection phenomenon. And he's just, literally immortalized. We use the word for Hulk, but Roddy Piper's also been immortalized as the, a grand participant in WrestleMania 1 and the MTV TV stuff, which was, it's stuff that will be iconic in the canon of wrestling lore. I mean, it's the opposite of Pez Whatley and Steve Regal, the stuff that we're always going to be talking about forever. And didn't need no title for that. So, but it's nice though, as he was winding down his career, that he could have a little run like this as the champ, and it benefited Jacques Rougeau in an odd sort of way, because people still remember him as a very flamboyant world intercontinental champion, albeit for a very short period of time. But at least Jacques could say he was intercontinental champion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not many can say. I'm sure he's happier with his 2-day run than Steamboat was with his 8 weeks holding the title, when originally he was promised it was going to be a full year. So,
well, hey, you get the run, you get the run. Don't matter what the duration is.
No, you're right. And Steamboat benefited on the other end.
As far as my conversations with Jacques Rougeau dating back to 2010, he was grateful. Maybe he's changed his tune since, but when I met him in 2010, he didn't want to say too much. But maybe nowadays he might have other things to say, but let's not go there. Let's just not go there.
No, but I think, but in terms of Steamboat, though, it worked out well for him because that's what led to him going to the NWA and having the classic series of matches with Flair, getting a world title run there. So in terms of the Intercontinental belt, Steamboat's misfortune turned out to be his fortune, Steamboat later on too. So no shame in holding the belt for a short time.
Absolutely. So at this point, we're going to call it a night. We're going to wrap things up. We've had a lot to talk about. I know we didn't really get to talk about the 2026 Royal Rumble, but I don't want to talk about it. Neither does Alan.
Well, no, everybody else. That's why we're great, because everybody's going to talk about that.
Exactly. We're not talking about it. I'll watch it, but will I talk about it? Unless there's something crazy, unless it's like one of those Jesus Christ or God appears out of nowhere.
You mean Vince?
That or the actual spiritual human being that we read about in the book that is bestowed upon us.
The opposite of Goulin's army and Kevin Sullivan's army of darkness.
Well, look, the fact of the matter is, it was a letdown. It was a letdown. No Chris Jericho. The only big surprise, the Bella Twins. The Bella Twins.
That was a
The
surprise.
fucking Bella Twins.
What was the surprise?
Everybody was hoping, oh, we're going to have Chris Jericho. We're going to have, instead of Break the Walls Down, we're going to have Judas as his new opening theme.
No, but what's the big deal about the Bella Twins? I don't understand. What do they do? Like,
Your guess is as good as mine. They're 2020 WWE Hall of Fame inductees.
Well, I know, big deal. And what does that have to do? Why? Because Brie hasn't been there for a while. Is that what the big deal?
Oh, yeah, because we hear Brie mode, because she's married to Bryan Danielson, who is a contracted talent AEW, okay?
So it's a bit like when Aleister Black was in AEW, but what's her name there? Selena Vega was in WWE.
Selena Vega, well...
on a bigger scale, though. On a bigger scale.
Yeah, well... Anyway,
well, I'm glad I missed it. I'm glad I missed it.
Hey, I watched it, but why would you'd say, David, why'd you waste your time with that? Something to do, something to stay out of trouble with.
If it keeps you off the streets, it just can't be beat. So that's good.
Exactly. It's something where I take a notebook and I put pen to paper, I write something down, but then I throw it out and like, why did I write this? Or why did I think this?
I wish the creative team would do that more on the WWE. Like, oh, that was a dumb idea. Never mind. Let's not do it. But no, they got to do it.
Speaking of creative, I don't know if we'll ever talk about this. So no time like the present. Have you, because I know you have Netflix, just like I have subscribed to. Have you watched WWE Unreal?
Well, no, but I did unfortunately watch some clips of it, and I'm really disgusted and appalled by what I see. That it's not enough that pro wrestling has dug its own grave, but they got to keep shoveling dirt and spitting into the. I'm just if imagine there was a time machine and accidentally some footage of that went back like 40 years, and a wrestling fan from 40 years ago was looking at this, and now I realize, okay, fine, times have changed, but how much do you have to keep rubbing it in people's faces that this is all farcical and there's no real heat and there's no real rivalries between the more interesting rivalries are not the ones you see on television, and just an aberration that disgusts me. I'm already disgusted anyway by what the product is, but they just can't help but pour salt in the wound and say, "Ha, you're an idiot if you're a wrestling fan, believing in us and whatever." Like, this is all just, why don't we just pull the curtain back and show you how we do our tricks? And oh my God, I can't stand any of it. And that's just even more insulting. And I hope I'm not alone in that opinion. But
well, let me just say, neither you nor I nor anybody who watches this currently or later is not an idiot. We're not idiots. We know exactly what it is going on.
Well, yeah, exactly. Why do they have to rub it in our face like that by showing us every minutiae of detail that goes into all this? And like, I don't know. I just don't want to know. Like, I want to just watch the magic unfold, or I used to. I don't want to know how to.
Well, here's the thing. After watching season 1 and 2 of Unreal, as well as watching Mr. McMahon, and on top of all the other WWE content on Netflix, I can tell you this. Especially nowadays, watching Unreal, as well as watching Raw and SmackDown on Netflix, I can tell you this. I can tell you one thing that is unreal, or is as real as can be, is that is there an extreme amount of stupidity when it comes to the production or the realization or the manifestation of said television shows.
Isn't it sad you use the adjective extreme when they have the creator of extreme, Paul Heyman, there, prettier? They're the creator of modern extreme. And this is the schlock that they put out. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, well, Paul Heyman's talents are limited at best.
His talents or the permission they give him to flex his talent?
All of the above. All of the above.
Well, it's, we knew it was bad when three promotions collapsed into one in 2001, and you kind of knew it was never going to be the same again. And boy, it's never been the same again. And it's always getting apparently worse. Except they keep making more money. They just always keep making more money while doing stuff that's worse and worse, pricing out the regular fans who are not millionaires. And there's, like Vince used to laugh that people can complain about us all we want, but then they show up the next week and buy tickets or tune into the TV show. So maybe,
Well, I can tell you this. I was at Saturday night's main event, and thank you to JF Firestorm Nedzuk for the wonderful invitation. Now, I will say this. A lot of people that are friends of mine, Facebook friends of mine, held off on purchasing tickets. And good that they did, because ticket prices went down and they and their kids could enjoy a nice, fun time with the family. So sometimes it pays to wait. So this is one of the occasions where,
wow.
especially here in Canada or Quebec, you cannot be gouging people for all of their lifetime supply of income or bi-weekly wages.
Well, apparently you can, though. That's the problem. You can try, and then the ones who avoid it, but, whatever. But I was just thinking the other day, I haven't, aside from my disastrous foray to a WWE show in 2012 at the invitation of someone else, I haven't attended a live event for that company since 1998, and I've honestly never missed it. Since that time, I don't care what I'm missing. I went back in 2012 to see what all the hoopla was about, and I left very disappointed. I've also been encouraged by others who are watching WrestleMania in the last 10 years and other pay-per-views to come over and take a look, and I never left with a smile on my face. It's funny that the WWE's more modern motto is to put a smile on people's faces. They didn't put one on mine, and the only time they ever have in the last 25 years is by emphasizing the talents of yesteryear or the footage of yesteryear or releasing unreleased footage of yesteryear. Those are the only times they bring a smile to my face. So I know I'm not important, but I was so devoted, and I was more than happy to spend money on them for years and to buy their magazine and go to their shows and become a member of their fan club and pay the membership and buy all the Coliseum home video stuff, whatever. But boy, they lost me, and I tend to think they lost a bunch of others as well. And you could see by the amount of people that tune in today that a lot of those people never came back. So I mean, maybe we're old, I don't know, but still, we're not the desirable demographic. I don't know, but still.
The landscape has changed. And as much as we can continue to vent and rant on what is wrong with anything and everything with World Wrestling Entertainment or the then World Wrestling Federation, we're going to wrap things up. Now, I want to remind each and every one of you, not that they need my promotion, but I'm doing this I'm doing this because I love these guys, as do you, Alan. Yep. Tomorrow, I want to say, please tune in to WCA Wrestling Collectibles Auction. Martin Villeneuve-Yanoni and Stéphane Gauthier are going to bring you yet another auction for the first time in a long time. And May 30th, they got a great show lined up, and they got a bunch of great guests. I could run down the list, but the list is going to be updated and given to each and every one of you tomorrow night. So be sure to tune in right here on the Facebook feed and maybe even on the YouTube feed. And I also want to thank LWA Live Wrestling Auctions. I want to thank Entre Deux Chaises de Métal. I want to thank Wrestling Figures Montreal, Josh Gontovnik, who is always administrating and putting together the page. And I want to thank each and every one of you for those that tune in. If you don't tune in now, no time like the future. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, hit the notification bell every single time we go live. It's always fun. It's always fun going live with Alan. I know maybe we don't do this frequently enough, but less is more.
And the waters we chart are uncharted. So.
As always, Alan, thank you so much for being there with me. And thank you for tuning in. For those of you that did, and for those of you that will later, thank you as always. And more great content coming your way on the Freeform Friday YouTube channel.
Sounds great.
Right? Goodbye. Good night. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you next time.